Adam Schefter says he expects there to be more trades this offseason. Could the 49ers pull off a blockbuster? And if they do, who on the team has trade value beyond Mac Jones? What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast, part of the Pro Football Insiders. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. That man is Levin Black. Hi, Levin.
Don't give me the Michelle intro.
You're cranky.
Be original.
Don't be cranky already.
Oh, I'm cranky. I'm extremely sleep deprived.
Oh, boy. Well, here's what we're going to do on today's show. It's going to be a fun show, okay? We're going to try to uncrankify you. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to take a look at some trade possibilities for the 49ers because Adam Schefter on his podcast said something very interesting. Take a listen to Mr. Schefter earlier this week.
Teams have been more apt and open to make big trades. We saw it at the trade deadline each of the last few years, especially this past year. Teams are unafraid about making a big deal. And with this free agent class, in the eyes of some, considered to be a little bit subpar, and with this draft class considered to be, in the eyes of some, a little subpar, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw an uptick in trade activity.
That is music to my ears because trade activity means chaos, and chaos in the offseason is fun. Chaos is a ladder, as a famous man once said. I think this is fascinating, Levin, because I think that, yes, Mac Jones, clear number one, has value on the 49ers. But if they wanted to get nuts, they got some other pieces they could move.
Yeah, but see, I got a fundamental flaw with what he's saying. Oh, the free agent market and the draft are not as strong as normal, so that means more trades. But a trade is a two-way street. If a team is trading a player, they're going to look to replace that player, right? Yes. Why would they trade a player and try to replace them through a weak draft and a weak free agency, right? Like, yeah, a team who's wanting to add a player is more likely to look to the trade market because of this. But the team that's looking to trade the player, I feel like, isn't. Like, why would you trade? If I'm Philly, it makes it less likely that I trade A.J. Brown. Why? Because I can't replace him. The draft sucks and free agency sucks, right? Like, it goes both ways. So it's, to me, like, look, he's looking at half the picture.
Well, I think it depends. Can you trade from a position of strength? For example, Mac Jones and the 49ers, right? They have their starting quarterback. They can trade Mac Jones. They've got Curtis Work to be the backup quarterback. So you don't need to replace the position that you're trading because you're good there. So that is yet another reason why a Mac Jones trade makes sense for the 49ers, because they don't need to look to the draft and free agency to replace the quarterback that they're trading.
Yeah. In that specific situation, how many situations do you think exist out there where a team goes, oh, we just have so many good guys at this position, we're going to trade one of them, and other teams look at them and agree, hey, yeah, that guy you want to trade is valuable. I think that guy would be great on our team.
Well, I think the other question is, like, every team has holes, right? What holes are you most comfortable with going into the draft and free agency? Like, for example, and I'm just like throwing this out there. This is just a hypothetical, right? Let's say you're the Raiders. Max Crosby, according to Jason La Canfora, Max Crosby told Tom Brady he's never playing for the Raiders again. So, assuming they're going to trade him, that's going to create a hole on their roster, right? Because he's a great pass rusher and they don't have another Max Crosby waiting around. So they're going to trade him. But if they trade him for a quarterback, where there's also a hole on the roster, they're like, you know what? Okay, we'll live with the deficiency of pass rusher if it gets us better in this other area. So I agree with you. You're not necessarily able to replace one for one, but if you can shift your roster puzzle around in a position that makes you more comfortable, you might be willing to do that.
Sure. But again, how many of those actual cases exist in the NFL? You named maybe the one of one.
Well, it depends. Like, do the Eagles say, hey, if we go into the offseason with, Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith as our main offensive weapons, are we okay with that if we trade AJ Brown for, whatever, a pass rusher, offensive, whatever the case may be, or extra draft picks? Maybe they're cool with that. I don't know. It's obviously something that we'll have to wait and see to find out. But
hey, your passing game sucks, so let's trade your best receiver. I mean, I get it. Yeah, they could trade and do that. Their pass rush has been great anyways, but it is aging. I mean, they did try to bring in Brandon Graham and get him back up to speed mid-season. So could you see that happen? Yeah, you could see those two teams specifically, the Raiders and Philly, working out a trade for those two players because it's a mutually beneficial. But there's very rare, and that might be the only one that makes sense in the NFL. That's not a common thing. So I don't feel like to talk specifically on Schefter's point that having a weak free agency and a weak draft means the trade market is going to be more active. Now, he said activity, and I do think that that's a key point because he's saying activity. He's not saying more trades.
Well,
I might be more willing to talk trade. That doesn't mean they come to fruition.
Chris, Mr. 49er, says Levin is always a Debbie Downer. There's a reason we call him the human. No, also, what if you trade
matters and semantics matter?
What if you trade position for position, right? Again, for example, what if you were to trade AJ Brown for Brandon Ayuk, right? That's position for position. So there's no hole to replace. You've made a trade. There you go. That is a trade that if you trade one position for the same position, that is another way to get a deal done. There are ways to get deals
Brandon
done.
Ayuk is not the piece in that trade. It would be whatever draft pick is added to it that makes that.
I understand, but
I know what you're saying, but again, how many instances are there that two teams have valuable players at the same exact position and they both like the other person's player more? Like an AJ Brown for a Brian Thomas, for instance, would be the one wide receiver one that jumps to mind. Does the Jaguars look at AJ Brown and say that's better than Brian Thomas and vice versa? Extremely doubtful. And how many other cases are there that you have two bona fide true starters? Yeah, you might have. I'm sure there are teams out there that you could see trades of, hey, our fourth string wide receiver will trade for their wide receiver that they no longer like and isn't part of the rotation because we think that one's better than our fourth. And at the same time, the other team thinks that guy might actually be able to contribute to their team, unlike the guy that trade. You could see low-end trades like that. But we're talking blockbuster. How many blockbusters does it match up that, hey, these two teams have players at the same position that they would rather swap for each other?
There's two other things. One, you could see guys dealt for 2027 draft picks because the thinking is, and again, I haven't dove into this draft class, so I'm just relaying this. But the thinking is that this year's draft class, not so great, but 2027 is supposed to be awesome. So maybe teams would be more likely to deal for 2027 picks. Now, of course, you got to wait a long time to get the benefit of that. But then the other part of it is Max Crosby, right? Refuses to play for the Raiders again. So they may have to deal him. Justin Jefferson seems incredibly unhappy in Minnesota. He just deactivated the Instagram. He did the old Instagram move. That's a classic for people that want to get traded. If teams have superstars that are just hell-bent on getting out of Dodge, that also could spur a trade when normally, like what you're saying, teams might not be inclined to do it because of all the things you mentioned.
Right. I'm not saying trades aren't going to happen. I'm saying a weak draft and a weak free agency doesn't make them more likely to happen. Yeah, Justin Jefferson can force his way out of Minnesota and you end up getting a blockbuster trade. But that's because the player is forcing the team to do it. It's not because the team sits there and goes, you know what? We'll go ahead and trade that player for draft picks when it's a weak draft. You know what I mean? For Minnesota, no, this is not the offseason they would prefer to move Justin Jefferson. If they feel like they have to move or it's no longer worth the money to have Justin Jefferson, this is not the offseason they would prefer to do it, but they might get forced to do it this offseason. You know what I'm saying? Like the team that has the blockbuster player is less likely this season to want to trade them because of the weak class and free agency. It's the teams that are wanting to acquire a player that are more likely to do it. But it's a two-way street, and those two things end up balancing each other to where it doesn't make it any more or less likely the trades happen.
I just want to point out for everybody, we're 10 minutes into this show. I came with a cool, fun idea based on something that a very prominent NFL insider said could happen. And Levin has spent 10 minutes trying to deflect and knock it down. And I'm still here trying
a very prominent member of the media who benefits from an active trade market, because that's all he does is report from anonymous sources. Yeah, it's in his best interest to pump it up and say, hey, you better pay attention to the news cycle, better follow me, because there's going to be a lot of blockbuster potential activity, not blockbuster trades, activity. So you better follow me for all the rumors. That's what he's saying.
I don't think his contract goes up based on how many trades there are, whether the offseason's active or not. He's still getting his money.
Exactly. So if trades don't happen, nothing happens to him. What happens by him talking it up, saying, "Ooh, it's going to be really busy," is people are going, "I better pay attention to him more." That's what he said means. It's no different than a team going into the season saying, "Hey, we got a great roster. We think we really can contend this year. You better buy tickets to our games." That's what they're saying by saying that. If they end up winning 6 games, they don't give a shit. The tickets are sold.
Let's move on to this side of it, because I think it's worth exploring. If the 49ers did want to get involved in said trade market, I think they got some interesting pieces where they could do it. Obviously, Mac Jones is the most obvious one. But if they really wanted to go nuts, I think there's I think if you wanted to move Ricky Pearsall, you could get something for Ricky Pearsall. I think he has value. If you wanted to move Trent Williams, you could definitely get something for Trent Williams. How close do you think the 49ers think that they are?
I think they think they're close. I mean, heck, they made the second round of the playoffs. They won a playoff game. I don't know too many teams that aren't having a hiatus or not a hiatus, exodus of many of their players that won a playoff game going, we can contend the next year. There are teams in history that won a playoff game and then turned around the next year and said, hey, it's a rebuild year. But those are the teams that had a whole bunch of players that they were having hit free agency or retiring and things like that made it clear we need to rebuild. That's not the 49ers. They are, I wouldn't say an ascending team, but I feel like they think they are, because they just went with the youth movement this past year. Never mind, they were propped up by a whole bunch of older vets. And again, that's been what I have kind of settled in on this offseason, reflecting back. This team is being propped up by a handful of draft and trade successes from years ago. The last 5 years, roster management for the 49ers, I think they're in the bottom 5 of the entire NFL. They have made bad draft after bad draft, bad free agent signing after bad free agent signing. They haven't had a big trade since Christian McCaffrey that has worked out. To me, I'm much more concerned than I was at the end of the season, just reflecting back and starting to dive into it. It was kind of like one of those little thoughts that started, and the more I looked into it, the more I thought, well, hold on, I think that little thought has a point. And that's that John Lynch and the front office has been screwing the pooch the last 5 years.
I don't know that just looking at the draft, I think that certainly they've had some issues. I mean, the Lance trade was devastating just because they gave up so many picks and they got nothing for it. But they did get Talanoa Hufanga out of that draft. He was an all-pro. They got Lenore out of that draft, and they got Elijah Mitchell. That's not a nothing draft. They got some value out of that.
There's a huge difference between a nothing draft and a good draft.
Yes.
But they've had repeated bad drafts.
Yes, they have. 2022 was a terrible draft. I mean, they got Brock, but other than that, it was just awful. 2023, Jair Brown is maybe the best player out of that draft class, and that's telling. 2024, I think, was an okay draft. You got Pearsall, Green, Pooney, Mustafa. I think that's okay. 2025, I think, was okay, but what they haven't gotten is stars. They haven't gotten stud guys. And when you can't get stars and stud guys in the draft, you either got to pay for them in free agency or you got to trade for them, which obviously costs players and or draft picks as well. And that's what this team is missing. That's what Jay and Steph were talking about yesterday. They don't have the star stud guys in this new core group other than Brock Purdy. And they got to find those. And those are the absolute hardest things to find. If you don't think it's in the draft, do you dial up Minnesota and say, what does it take to get Justin Jefferson? Is that a way you think they might go?
I think it's a way they might go. I have my doubts whether they do. It's hard to say with this team. I do think that that this offseason, more than any other offseason, has a better chance of the team doing a philosophy shift. This team has been pretty set in their ways. And I feel like the Seahawks kicking their ass twice in a row and then going on to win the Super Bowl might spur them to change their mind and get a little more aggressive, take more risk. I think they've been in kind of this low risk, play it safe kind of mode for 6 years now. But the reason they don't have stars is because they're the worst first-round drafting team in the NFL, period. I went and looked. They have 8 draft picks in the first round in this Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. How many games do you think those 8 draft picks played for the 49ers this season? Again, these are first-round guys that are all 32 or younger still, meaning if they're even decent, they're still in the NFL and still producing and playing.
And you want me
to 8 draft picks? How many games do you think they got out of them
for the 49ers?
Yeah.
Well, Michael got hurt. Bosa got hurt for early in the year. Those are long-term injuries, so that wiped out their seasons. I'm trying to think who else. Oh, Kinlaw is gone, obviously.
There's only one other one on the roster, and it's Pearsall.
And he missed a huge chunk of the season.
8 first-round picks, including multiple top 10 picks. They got 20 total games out of those guys. They got, I think, a total of 4 sacks and about 500 receiving yards out of 8 first-round picks. The fact that you are 9 years in, you've had 8 first-round picks and only 3 remain on the team is atrocious. The fact that 2 of those are still on their rookie contract is atrocious. Like, okay, you can put it this way. They have 6 players that they have drafted in the first round that would not be on a rookie contract anymore. Only one of them is still on the roster. Now, of the guys that are no longer on the roster, most of them are either not in the NFL or are nowhere near sniffing a starting job. Solomon Thomas is basically out of the NFL. He played, but he's not a main starter on any team. Reuben Foster out of the league. Trey Lance, he's a backup, and he was a terrible backup who had to start one game and crap to the bed. Javon Kinlaw, he played, and I think he actually started some games, but he did not have a good season. Like, it's not just that they're not getting stars with their first-round picks. They're getting guys that you question whether they can even start. I mean, Solomon Thomas never developed into a full-time starter for the 49ers. Javon Kinlaw never developed into a full-time starter for the 49ers. Reuben Foster was out of the league in 2 years. And Trey Lance, obviously the biggest miss of them all. That's, to me, what's going on. They haven't had good drafts in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds lately, but they've been okay enough. It's that they have completely and utterly missed on the first-round picks. And that's unacceptable at this point. That's why they don't have stars.
That's the most likely position where you're going to get stars because obviously guys picked in the first round generally tend to have, height, weight, speed, all the physical stuff, all the traits and abilities that you want in a star player. And they haven't had as much success as other teams there, to be sure. Can they do it this year? Absolutely. They have found star players in the past, not in the first round, but they have found star players in the past. They have to do it again. They just have to, because that's how every good team is built. Oh, the Seahawks, we got to build it like the Seahawks. Look at the draft. The draft is the answer. Why every team gets good, why every team gets bad. It's the same answer. The draft, because that's when you get your cheap players and you build your team primarily of draft picks. So we'll see what the 49ers do. I'm fascinated to see if they want to use their picks on players, if they want to use them in a trade for a Justin Jefferson per se, or if I was John Lynch, what I think I might do is I might say, look, we need a stud number one. We still like Pearsall. We think he could be a fine player, but we need a stud guy to be our number one wide receiver. So I look around the league and I just go through and I say, let me just look at the number one wide receivers that maybe potentially could be available. You inquire about Justin Jefferson. I think you maybe inquire about Garrett Wilson from the Jets. Just go make your list of all the teams and then say, all right, of these guys that we think would be acceptable for us, which one do we think is the most gettable? And whenever you get to that guy, you go get him. Like, what? Trade your picks. Do you want to put Mac Jones in that deal? Whatever the case may be. And if you can't get that guy, go to the number 2 guy on the list and just keep calling everybody until you get a deal.
I think with their track record on first round picks and the fact that I think they're close, yeah, you use the first round pick. Like, that should make it more likely the team says, sure, we'll trade this late first round pick because we're likely to miss on it anyways. And I also think if you're a contending team, unless you are like struggling with the salary cap, which obviously the 49ers are not, plenty of talk about how much cap space they have. But if you're a team that is close and you have cap space, thus you don't need the cost-controlled rookie first-round pick, I don't understand why teams don't trade their first-round pick more. I think draft picks are massively overrated. It's because of that if I was a GM, I would hoard draft picks for a while in order to get more. Like, I would trade down almost guaranteed every single year. And why would I trade down? Because the value of trading down is so much more than staying put on a player that you don't know whether they're going to pan out or not. You can believe whatever the hell you want. Teams are wrong more often than they're right, even the good ones. So to me, you trade down, you get those extra picks. You know what those extra picks enable you to do? Go trade for the veterans that you want. Like, it's if you trade down, you're likely getting a player that has just as much of a chance of panning out as if you stayed put, and you're getting the draft pick ammo to go get a veteran or two that will help your team. Like, it is so much more beneficial. The thing is, you got to swallow your ego, and you got to tell your coach, I don't give a crap how good you think this guy is. The fact is, you don't know, so we're trading down.
That is one area where it worries me about the 49ers, because I don't think that Lynch and Shanahan look at the draft board properly. I think that they look at it like a coach, because that's what Kyle is. And he's like, ooh, I really like this guy, so we got to make sure we get this guy, instead of, here's a group of wide receivers that we like. We're going to sit and wait to see which one of those guys falls to us, because number one, we don't see a huge difference in all of them. And number two, like you said, because we don't know who's going to be good, we're not going to overextend ourselves to get any one guy, because we're unsure of what we're actually buying here. So we will buy whichever one falls to us. Now, you could say, well, that only works if there is a group of players that you think are tall enough to ride the bumper cars, so to speak. But I would think that there would be. Especially at wide receiver. You can get good ones, a lot of different rounds.
For every player that a coach or GM was crazy excited they got and convinced he was going to be a starter on the team and ended up panning out, there's one or two guys that they were jumping on the table for when they got him, and they didn't amount to squat. Remember, the GM of the Buffalo Bills was standing on the table cheering about getting Keon Coleman.
Well, that's a crazy situation.
So, like, I think it's ego, I think, that makes teams not trade down, because I think they look at it and goes, no, our scouting, we know this is the key piece. Mm-hmm. This is the guy that makes the difference for us, rather than doing the zoomed out view of, how many times have you thought that and the guy didn't amount to anything? How many times were you excited a guy somehow made it to you in the third round that you had a first round grade on, and guess what? He was more like a seventh round guy. Like, to me, you miss, even the good teams miss more often than they hit with their draft picks. So you just got to recognize that and say, I don't care how much I like somebody. If there is a good trade down offer and we're still in the first round, I think there is a point of diminishing return. Trading down from the 10th pick in the 4th round to gain an extra 6th round pick, not much value in that. You might as well just stay put at that point. But in the first round, I'm trading down almost every time.
Wasn't it? I forget. I think it was, they told Bill Walsh, they were like, because he kept trading down, and they were like, Bill, we got to eventually make a pick. We're going to have every pick in the 6th round. And eventually he did. It worked out. But there's two more parts of this, because you touched on something that I've heard a lot of 49er fans say and talk about, specifically when talking about a trade of Mac Jones. Because I do the thing you're not supposed to do on the internet, and I read the comments on the YouTube videos that you guys are leaving. So there is one aspect of that I want to address. But before I do, want to give a little love to Sleeper. Thank you, Sleeper, for hopping on board this season. We've been telling you about it all year long. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, football season's over. I can't use Sleeper anymore. Yes, you can. You absolutely can, because they don't just have football. They have all sports. They have season-long fantasy leagues. They have DFS as well for you. And now they've got something cool. If you see that, you could see right on my screen at the top, they have team picks as well. So you can now just pick winners of each game, whatever sport you want to do. In fact, if you want to go, the Warriors, I believe, are playing the Spurs tonight. Guess what? You can go bet on the Warriors if you want to do that, or you can pick the Spurs. Either way, whatever you want to do. But they now have teams available for you in addition to all the other picks that we talked about. Super easy. And if you want to check it out for the first time, go ahead and sign up. You'll get a free $20 entry. And if you want to deposit money, use our code on the screen, GSP, and you'll get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. And if you get your picks right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. So go check it out for yourself. You're going to have some fun, I promise you. Download the app. You will see. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, Levin. When I have been talking about Mac Jones and the trade of Mac Jones and the trade of anybody for potential draft picks, a very common refrain I see from 49er fans are, you have to trade Mac Jones this offseason, but we'll blow the picks anyway. And I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. If you think we're going to just blow the picks, then don't trade Mac Jones. You might as well keep the asset. If the picks are not going to get you anything, you might as well have a good backup quarterback. But I disagree with a lot of fans that are like, well, the 49ers have had some bad drafts, so they're terrible at drafting, and they're going to be terrible for all their picks from now until forever. Look, they've had some bad drafts. Every team has bad drafts. They can have good drafts too.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep pushing forward. You got to keep trying, even though you're losing. You know what I mean? Like, if you just give up because, well, I've lost a couple times, so I give up. I don't think anybody would ever make it to adulthood. You know what I mean? Like, life is a losing and how hard you keep trying. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things in life. Almost everything equates to you're going to lose at some point in this. Do you give up? Do you lose your confidence? Do you stop trying? Or do you get motivated to come back and do even more? Do you get motivated to work on whatever weakness caused you to lose? Do you go, I'll just keep trying the same thing? Because that's the difference between lots of different people. And the people who succeed in life are the people that says, I lost, something must need to change. Something must need to be improved for me to not lose again. And that can be about anything in life, whether it's work, your kids. I've failed as a parent before. I've made mistakes as a parent, but it motivates me to fix those so I don't do them again. If you just quit, again, okay, then nobody has parents growing up, because every single parent makes all kinds of mistakes. That's kind of what parenthood is. It's a humbling experience because you're going to make so many different mistakes.
You've made mistakes as a parent. You've made mistakes as a co-host.
I was going to say, the one thing I haven't made mistakes on is this show, other than who I selected to tie my wagon with.
Iceman 0072 says, Homer Simpson once said life is one crushing defeat after another. Hey, you know what? But if you have one more victory than defeat, you come out ahead. I think that there is a overstatement of the 49ers draft issues. I think that we remember the bad drafts that they've had. And again, having back-to-back bad draft classes is crushing. It's really damaging for a team. But also, like, I don't think Micah Williams is a bad pick. I don't think Alfred Collins was a bad pick. Nick Martin is probably a bad pick. But it's like what I said before. They haven't had the great picks. Micah Williams may not ever be like a great player, a great pass rusher, but he could still be really good. That doesn't mean he was a bad pick, even if he's picked at 11. Like, you need good players on your team. You're not going to have an all-pro at every spot. I think that because they haven't gotten the stars, people look and they're like, is this guy a star? No, bad pick. And that's not necessarily true in my eyes.
I personally think you are overvaluing mediocre role player type players that you can go find for vet minimums. And that's mainly what the Niners have gotten in the last few years. Even the guys that are starting are, they can not crap the bed. That's the level of starter the Niners have gotten lately is, well, they won't crap the bed. They're just not going to make it either.
No, I disagree with that.
Since you can just break it down rather than just talk, I think you're hyper focusing on just the Niner players rather than looking at the Niners drafts and zooming out and comparing them to everybody else's on how many hits and misses, what kind of value they derived from the drafts, how many starts they got, the quality of player of those starts. And when you do that, it's eye-opening because since 2021, the Niners are close to last in the league in terms of value derived from the draft. You talked about Alfred Collins and CJ West. I like their potential. They had flashes. And while I don't put a ton of weight in PFF grades, guess what? The worst graded starter for defensive tackle, they combined CJ West and Alfred Collins. That was the lowest graded starter defensive tackle in the entire league.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Because their average play was not good. They had flashes to where you can see the potential. You can see the high upside because they both had plays. It's like, ooh, not that many defensive tackles can do that. The problem was, by and large, the average was they got their butts kicked and they got moved around. So can they raise the low of their bar? That's the problem for me with Alfred Collins and CJ West, but especially Alfred Collins. His bar, in terms of the type of play he can have, is very high. But the average level of that bar, you can step right over. And that's the problem. It's like, yeah, you're having these high moments, but in between those high moments, you're playing terribly.
Yeah, and I don't care about PFF grades at all. And I think that whatever they did in 2025 has no effect on what they can do in 2026.
Right, but you're talking potential. We don't know. So when you're talking about the draft and the value derived to date, the Niners in their 2025 draft got, I think it was rated third lowest, and that's not just PFF ratings. That was amount of starts gained, amount of total snaps played by the rookie class. There were a lot of metrics that the Niners were in the bottom 10 for, and not just metrics. That's not metrics. That's just straight facts and statistics of how many starts you got and how many plays. The Niners were in the bottom 10 of almost every single thing you could use to rate a rookie class.
That's fine. I think they're a lot better than the rating system looks at. They're just not the freakish star players. We didn't get a Bosa in this draft, right? We got an Alfred Collins, a CJ West, a Micah Williams. And I think if Micah Williams had played also, it would have looked a lot better too. The fact that you've had the freaking injury that has killed it. We didn't get to see him, unfortunately, or for half a season, I should say. They didn't play Jordan Watkins. They didn't play Jordan James. Not that I'm expecting massive things out of Watkins and James for next year. But I think the combination of, like, one, Alfred Collins and CJ West played defensive tackle, which isn't super sexy. You're not going to get a ton of stats playing those positions anyway, but that doesn't mean you were a bad player. And then two, the guy that you would expect to get some stats, Micah Williams, only played 9 games and then tore his ACL.
You can make an argument that the reason the Niners rank as low as they do is Kyle Shanahan won't play a freaking rookie offensive player. And I'm fine if that's the argument you want to make. But if you adjust for that, that still only gets them the league average.
I think that they're better than you think they are. But that
I think there's potential they could be. But in terms of the actual substance that we have to judge from, it's not. And I think that's the difference. You keep mixing the two. And that's not what I'm saying. And that's not what people who do these ratings are saying. They're not rating on what they think could happen. That has literally zero weight to this.
Okay.
All we're talking about is what has happened to date. And that's not good.
So 2025, they weren't star players. Okay, I concede that.
Don't do that. We're not saying not star players. We're saying in comparison to all other teams, they're amongst the worst. They got amongst the least amount of play from them.
Awesome. Great. But that doesn't have anything to do with what they are in 2026.
No, see, now it does. Because what you did in 2025 is the only substance and amount that you have to judge the likelihood of what happens in 2026. It doesn't mean that it's guaranteed, but in terms of probability, what we have to judge from is what happened in 2025. So it is likely that the 2025 draft class will be at best league average compared to other teams and what they're getting out of their 2025 draft class.
But that's everybody. Every draft class is likely. The fact that the likelihood that you get stars is always unlikely because there are fewer stars than league average.
Again, I'm not saying stars. I'm talking about just people who freaking play. I'm talking snap counts. I'm talking about the number of starts that you got out of them. They were in the bottom 10 of both of those.
Well, you got 16 out of Collins. You got 16 out of Stout. You got 14 out of West, although I don't think he missed starts due to injury. They had him inactive for a couple of games, which is infuriating. Right there, that's 3 starters, full-time starters in one draft class. That's pretty good. If you got 3 full-time starters out of this draft class in 2026, you'd be thrilled. Most draft classes don't get you 3, plus Michael Williams, which obviously, he was hurt for half the year. Nick Martin didn't do a damn thing. That looks like a pick that they set on fire. But I think that they're going to look a lot better in 2026, and I don't think you can.
I hope they do, and I do see potential in them. I'm just saying, based on the substance that you have, it's not as likely as it is that they continue to be poor.
But I think that you can't necessarily use 2025 because Michael Williams playing next to Nick Bosa and Alfred Collins and CJ West is going to look better than Michael Williams not playing next to those guys, and vice versa. Those guys are going to benefit from playing next to Michael Williams as well. So I think I hate to use the term because John Lynch loves to use it, but I do think that there is a force multiplier that is not accounted for when you look at just what they did in 2025.
And I think it's fool's gold to believe everybody stays healthy and that they will actually play next to each other all that much.
Well, when we should clarify this too. When we say stays healthy, there's a difference between do you get 17 games out of somebody or do they miss 3/4 of the season, right? Like, is Bosa going to play 17 games, assuming he even can come back for week 1? No, I don't think that's likely. But if he plays 14, that's staying pretty healthy, right? Like, you would take that right now. When I talk about, like, can this Niner team stay healthy, can you just avoid the major injuries? Every team's going to have bumps and bruises throughout the year, but this year they got hit by the devastating major injuries that took a bite out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think there's difference of people. Some people think, well, all these players are constantly having major injuries, so there's a pretty good chance that they will once again be amongst the worst for major injuries. And then there's the people that say, well, one injury doesn't mean that another injury is more likely. And I think those people are just dead freaking wrong. I agree with the first one. Somebody who's blown out their knee is more likely to have a major injury. And there's multiple reasons for that. Once you blow out a knee, guess what? You know how you repair ACL? You steal a ligament from elsewhere. You cut the knee elsewhere. It makes it weaker. It makes it more likely to happen again. On top of that, when they come back from it, most players, whether they actually need to or not, due to the psychological part of it, they compensate for it. And that means they're putting more stress on other parts of that leg, more stress on the other leg. They're not quite using their upper body correctly because they're not quite stepping right, because they don't fully trust it right off the bat. And I think that is something it's an impossible thing to equate and get data from. How much does coming back from one major injury cause a different one to happen somewhere else because you were compensating? You can't ever figure that out. But it absolutely does happen. You can just listen to the players talking about, well, I didn't fully trust it for the first 3 weeks, or, I didn't feel right for the first 4 weeks. So I think one major injury does lead to more injuries down the road, not necessarily major ones. Does your hamstring get tweaked because you were compensating for the leg and stepping slightly off? You know what I mean? So I fall into the one injury leads to more. And the Niners have had so many, I'm not sitting there holding my breath expecting a top 10 healthy season.
I wouldn't expect top 10. I would settle for, honestly, I would settle for below average at this point. I used to say, can we just get average? Now I'm even lowering my expectations. Give me just below average instead of like worst ever in the league. How about, can we do that? I
would settle for 1 star at a time. You want George Kittle to miss 5 games? I'm fine with it. You want Nick Bosa to miss 6 games? I'm fine with it. Same with Fred Warner. Just don't have them all be at the same effing time.
And can we not have every linebacker be hurt at the same, like cluster injuries at a position? Let's go for that. I would sign for that too. Which is, it goes back to what you were saying, because that they are relying on these guys with all this mileage on them. They have to find the next group of stars. And part of that is the next group of guys that don't have the battle scars, don't have the mileage, and don't have the injury concerns. That's a real part of it. Now, the Niners have tried to draft guys for the most part, not every guy, but a lot of their, especially recently, I feel like if you look, the guys that they've drafted have a very sterling history in terms of injuries. Ricky Pearsall being the biggest case of that, right? First round draft pick at a position of need, wide receiver, and they drafted a guy that never missed a single game in college due to injury. Unfortunately, we know what has happened with Ricky Pearsall since then, but I feel like they've tried. It just hasn't always worked out.
You're not wrong. And bringing up Ricky Pearsall, can I just say, as somebody that doesn't live in San Francisco, if players keep getting shot, change the damn name to Santa Clara 49ers and drop San Francisco, because Jesus Christ.
It's an unfortunate situation with Keon White. Again, had surgery, seems to be successful. Obviously, it was never life-threatening, which is obviously good, but we don't know when he's going to be back. The team has not put any highlight on it whatsoever. With Ricky Pearsall, it's interesting. If he was drafted in 2024, so he's played 2 seasons. If he comes back and has a healthy season next year, what do you do with Ricky Pearsall?
I don't think I would be picking up a 5th-year option with Ricky Pearsall, especially with that being at the point that Purdy is becoming expensive. I think you have to be smart about it. And yeah, I'm not paying any wide receiver off one year anymore, because that's broken. I look at Ricky Pearsall, and to me, I like Ricky Pearsall, but I think his high side is kind of like a Jalen Waddle. You know what I mean? He is somebody that he can be a number 1, but he's really like, you want him to be one of the best number 2s in the league. That's what you want him to be. If he's your number 1, you can make it by. But he is not that 13, 14, 1,500-yard receiver as a number 1. So you prefer him to be your number 2, and he could be a really, really good number 2.
I'd be fascinated to see what he could do with a full year of health. I think he could put up 1,300 yards. I really do. I think he was on track to do that in the beginning of this year. Unfortunately, it just all unraveled for him. He came out of the gate strong this year. 4 catches, 108 yards against Seattle. Then he has 4 for 56 with Mac Jones. Then he goes 8, 117 against Arizona. Then he goes 4 for 46 against Jacksonville when Brock came back on the messed up toe. And then he got hurt. And then it was sort of derailed. He comes back against Tennessee, 6 for 96. He plays against Chicago, 5 for 85. Those are damn good numbers. You just got to stay on the field. But I think when he's on the field, he is capable of producing it at a very high level.
Producing at a high level, sure. Being a true difference maker, that's what I don't see out of him. I think your difference makers are the guys that, God, this guy's just unstoppable. You know what I mean? And if you want to shut down Pearsall, you can shut him down. You just have to focus on him. You know what I mean? Because he gets open because of the Shanahan system and because he is a pretty good receiver. He's not unstoppable. If a team decided to shade a safety his way or double cover him, Ricky Pearsall ain't getting a catch.
I don't know. I don't think we've seen enough of him to be able to make that judgment. And luckily, the 49ers don't have to do anything with him. Like, they don't have to pay this year to find out. But I do think he has to, if he is going to be that guy, he's got to show it in 2026. Like, that's it. He has to.
I feel like I would not pick up the fifth-year option. I recognize the fifth-year option is cheaper than a franchise or paying him. But to me, it's, all right, you had a good third year, cool. Fourth year, I hope you can repeat it. If you repeat it and you're clearly, a really good receiver, we'll franchise you for a single year. We'll get 5 years out of you. Now you're aging. Now you're in your upper 20s. Go find your money elsewhere. Like I said, I think it was last week, might have been the week before on our show. I'm not in favor of paying a wide receiver ever again unless it happens to be one of like the true top 5 guys in the league.
Depends what it costs and what the cap is. Like, if the fifth-year option is like $18 million, I would consider that. That's not that much, especially where you see where the friggin' wide receiver market. I mean, Jamar Chase gets $40 million. Is receiver X half as good as that? If it is, then you would pick up the option if it was like $18 million around there. So I wouldn't rule it out, but he's got to prove it this year. He absolutely has to. We've got to see you stay on the field. The first year, I'm not calling that injury prone because the only reason he missed games is because he was shot. But last year, that knee was a clear concern. I mean, he sat out for 6 weeks, came back, and then immediately hurt it again. Like, that is troubling. I wonder, is some of that a misdiagnosis on the training staff? I don't know. Should he have just had surgery right away? I don't know. But whatever, he wasn't on the field. And then he immediately hurt it again. He has got to play next year. He has got to stay on the field, and he has got to produce. And I think if he does, he will, but he's got to actually do it. And then next year is a make or break year for there's a fork in the road for his career. Because if he stays in San Francisco with Brock and Kyle, I think he could have a damn good career, but it's all going to come down to what happens in 2026.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, other wide receivers have had breakout years in year 4 and then still stuck around and got paid. I think his third season is certainly, I think, one that's going to factor into how the 49ers approach the position. If he breaks out, if they didn't trade for a star receiver, they're not going to. They won't turn around and do it in 2027. If they don't go get a Justin Jefferson this offseason and they try to bring in a mid-tier free agent and draft a guy and all that, and Pearsall does not break out, I think in 2027, they will have to look at it and say, no, we have to go get a star. Whoever's on the market, we have to go get them.
The other part of this is if you don't then have confidence in the 49ers to draft a wide receiver, then you should pick up Ricky Pearsall's option.
So that's the funny thing. I have confidence in the 49ers to draft a good receiver early in the draft. I don't have confidence Kyle Shanahan will utilize them correctly in the first year, and they're a contending team. So I don't want to wait a year.
The whole, we're a contending team, so we can't play young players thing it's just illogical to me.
It's just Kyle Shanahan. He's got something up his ass about playing young players at wide receiver. And I don't know how you fix that because he's the coach. You can't go in and say, no, you're going to start this guy. You can't do that to a coach. That doesn't work. But at the same time, Kyle clearly has something in him that is broken in terms of being willing to play a wide receiver who's young. As we talked about, he freaking played Malik Turner over Jordan Watkins because, Jordan Watkins missed some practice 3 months prior and he just couldn't get up to speed. It's Malik freaking Turner who wasn't even on the roster. It's Malik Turner who hasn't had an NFL catch in 4 years. Don't give me that crap that, because he missed a few weeks of practice 3 months prior, that's why he can't play now.
Well, this is how I would frame it to Kyle if I could actually talk to him about this. I would say, look, either you have a weird thing about not tolerating some mistakes by a rookie, or you don't have that thing, but then you're saying that this player was so bad that that the team was better off without him on the field. And that's also a problem. It's also an indictment of you. So I'm totally fine with taking Kyle's word for it for which one it is, but those are the only options.
Here's my problem with it. Once you get to the point of turning to a Sky Moore, a Malik Turner, there's no reason not to throw out the rookie. I don't care what the rookie looks like in practice. I really don't. The rookie could look horrendous in practice. But at that point, you got nothing to lose because the guy you're going to play has a long history in the NFL as a veteran showing that he can't be the guy, that he can't be counted on. So rather than take the guy that I'm guaranteed I can't count on because he's been around long enough that I know that's guaranteed, I'm going to play the guy that might look like crap in practice, but maybe getting an opportunity changes something in him because he has not had the opportunity before, unlike the other guys that have had multiple opportunities. And that's what I fault Kyle for. He doesn't seem to believe that. He believes, well, if I know I can count on this guy to be crap, I would rather go with the guy that I know I can count on to be crap because at least I know what I'm getting than play the guy that might be crap but also might be good.
It's a really weird, I don't want to call it a kink because that's not the right word, but it's a weird hang up. Hang up is the word. There we go. Let's get to a couple super chats. Smells like foot in here. Thank you very much. Says if this team re-signs Deebo, they're full Wild Hogs movie. They just don't know how to move forward. That's my biggest concern. They show they don't think they can build that roster again anew. For anyone that's wondering what the comment is about, George Kittle strongly hinted that the 49ers could bring Deebo Samuel back this year. I would absolutely hate that. I think it'd be the complete opposite of what the 49ers need to do. We'll wait and see. I understand why Kittle would love the idea because he loves Deebo. They're friends. They went to war together, man. They went through it together. Of course, George Kittle likes Deebo Samuel. But this is why you don't let the tight end build the roster.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm hoping that's just George Kittle in his feels rather than something that he's found out from the team.
By the way, that would be blatant tampering also if they already had this thing all set up and ready to go. Not that that matters and not that.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he might know that Kyle and John are looking into, plan to pursue him.
And here's the thing with that. Like people are like, oh, if you bring in Deebo on a veteran minimum. No, I don't even want him on a vet minimum. He's not a good player anymore. Like, no, that's it. And like you have talked about in the past, Kyle sometimes falls in love with him. They don't need Deebo Samuel. They don't. They had a good offense this year without Deebo Samuel, without basically any wide receivers. They still had a very good offense this year. They don't need it. And I agree. I don't like the vibes. I don't like the kind of not moving forward. I would be very, very against it. And honestly, it would really shake my confidence in Kyle Shanahan if they did it.
Play the soundbite because I only got one hot take and it's Deebo.
Oh, no. I didn't know you were going to do that real quick. I don't know.
Levin's hot takes.
It's singular this time, hot take, as I said, and we're talking about it. So that I can get all I think out. You just talked about how it would shake your confidence. It wouldn't shake my confidence. It would eliminate my confidence. That's my hot take. If Deebo returns to this team, I'm out on Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They would have to. The only way I could see Kyle sticking around is they're getting rid of Lynch and Kyle gets no say on roster decisions. If he's willing to accept that and stick around as coach, fine. But if Deebo comes back and Kyle's not willing to give up all control over the roster, then they can both go because that to me shows a fundamental flaw. The super chat summed it up very well at the end. It shows they don't believe they can build anew. And that tells me, okay, it's stagnant. You guys need to go. You can't see it. And for anybody saying, well, Deebo could contribute. Yeah, contribute what? Because let me go through it. Because I went through and looked, okay? His yards per target this season would be in the 30th percentile for yards per target for wide receivers over the last 3 seasons with at least 50 targets. He's like 172nd out of 247 instances. His yards before catch, meaning the amount of air yards he's having on receptions, it was 3.6 this season. Do you think that's low? Yes, it was 4.9 his last year with the 49ers when we were talking about all they do is throw screens to him. It was even less this season with Washington. His yak per reception, right? 6.5 yards, the worst of his career. He had the least amount of yak on receptions in his career. And finally, his broken tackles in terms of a ratio to how many receptions he had, thus how many opportunities he had to break a tackle, was the worst in his career at 12 receptions per broken tackle. The previous lowest was his rookie year at 8.1. In his prime with the 49ers, he was breaking a tackle every 3 to 4 receptions. He's at 12. So he's breaking tackles less. He's breaking tackles the worst he's ever been. He's getting the least amount of yak he's ever had. And he's only getting receptions the closest to the line of scrimmage he's had since his rookie season. Like, the guy hasn't just declined. I would argue he's pretty much toast at this point.
It makes no sense. And think about the contract negotiations they had at the time. They told Deebo, they told him this. We don't think you're going to age well as a player. And he was very upset about that, which I understand. But also, they were correct. And that has played out. It's exactly how you thought a player with his skill set and his habits and all that stuff would age. It looks exactly the way they thought. So why then would you now pay to bring him back when you didn't want to give him those years when you signed him to the extension, right? Like, if you don't want to give a guy a 3-year deal because you think 3 years from now he's going to be bad, you don't give him a 1-year deal and then sign him to a free agent contract 2 years after that. It doesn't make any sense. So none of that would make any sense. I completely agree with this take that they would just be a devastating sign. I really hope they don't do it. I really hope that they don't do it. A couple other comments here. Oklahoma Niners 212 says, where do I find 49ers in 5? I can't find it. That's audio only. I did it on the YouTube channel and nobody watched it. So that's just the truth. But if
it takes time to produce it for YouTube, and it wasn't getting watched enough. That's what you're saying. It's not as simple as just throwing it up there on YouTube and being done with it.
Right. Of course, it takes time. But anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Pod, Spotify, anywhere, go download it. I highly recommend it. It's a 5-minute news update. You get radio clip interviews. You get news. You get everything during the season, injury reports, and everything happening with the team. Go and check it out. I really do. I love it. It's one of my favorite shows here, but it's an audio only. And Oklahoma Niners 212 says, I don't see the option for the $8.99 YouTube channel membership. Is it live? Yes, it is. It's called Gold Circle. We have different levels to the YouTube channel membership. If you want to check it out, it starts at $2.99 a month. But there are different levels. The $8.99 membership we just launched is called Gold Circle. You get a private Zoom chat with me and potentially other members of the Gold Standard team. If you want to go check that out, I highly recommend it. The other thing that we're not ready to announce, but we're close, we're dotting I's and crossing T's, is the merch store. We are going to have a merch store up and running. It will be up and running very, very soon. It's not quite there yet, but we're getting there. We're very close. And when it is, of course, I will tell everybody all about it. You can go and check it out. I'm very excited about it. If there's anything that you want, leave a comment. Let me know. We're going to have a bunch of different product options there, but if there's something specific you want, maybe even a specific design that you want, let me know. I'm very open to it. Seems very flexible in terms of what we can do with design. So I'm very excited about that. Maybe I'll just make a giant t-shirt with your face on it, Levin.
I was going to say a pair of underwear with my face on it.
No one buys that. I don't even want to picture. I don't want your face I'm not even going to finish that sentence. Okay. I don't think we're going to do that. Okay. This is an interesting comment before we go. Half Dead 211 says, I don't think we're a desired destination anymore. In terms of free agency, would you agree with that?
Neither agree nor disagree. Are we as desired as we were? No. Are we still, I would say, probably in the top 10? Yeah.
If you are an offensive player, I don't know how you could not want to go. Go to San Francisco. Hell, if you're a quarterback, we've seen how much it can help. But even if you're a wide receiver or a running back, like, hey, if I get on the field, Kyle Shanahan's going to do good things. Kendrick Bourne might get a job next year because of what Kyle Shanahan did with him this year. Jawan Jennings is going to get paid this offseason, not from the 49ers. He's going to get paid from somebody because of what Kyle Shanahan did with him. I think if you are an offensive player, say what you want about Brock Purdy, the dude flat out produces. I think San Francisco is a very desirable location.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into desirability. Some of them are not in the control of anything you can change.
Right.
The weather, where you live, things like that makes the 49ers among the best for desirability. You add in, as you said, a guy that's as respected as any in the league in terms of offensive mind, and you get offensive players wanting to go there. When you talk about history of franchise and the lore and how marquee it is and how popular you could get because the fan base is so large. Again, the Niners are near the top in those things. So I think it would be really hard for the Niners to get outside of the top 10 in something like this because the weather's not going to change. The amount of marquee and intrigue and amount of primetime games and things like that is very likely to stay at a high level because even when the Niners are bad, they usually get multiple primetime games.
The primetime, didn't even think of that in my calculation. It's a good point. Like, yeah, it helps to have these games in prime time when the whole world is watching. That would be in just another little, like you said, everything goes into the stew. That would be another little thing that would make the Niners attractive.
Did you see the kickoff for the Australia game, or at least rumored? I think it's only rumored.
I was literally just about to call that up. According to John Orand, week 1, Niners-Rams in Australia.
It's got to be week 1, yeah.
He made the disclosure in connection with his reporting, and I'm reading from the website now, that the NFL has been taking meetings with streamers regarding the rights to broadcast the game along with 4 other international games. Let's see. The Melbourne representative at the NFL Super Bowl Media Center said the game will be played on a Sunday afternoon U.S. time. With a 16-hour flight from LA and San Francisco and a 19-hour time difference, playing the game on the Sunday of week 1 would put both teams in a bind when it comes to preparing for their week 2 games. Shocker. The 49ers are getting screwed by the league when it comes to that. Unless both teams will be getting a very early bye, it makes far more sense to start week 1 on the Sunday of Labor Day weekend. That would give both teams ample time to travel home and get ready for week 2, which for them would be 2 weeks later. They're not going to do that. They're just going to stiff both the Niners and the Rams. That's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, see, I think we're at the point with the scheduling crap that a team should boycott. Say, nope, we're choosing not to go.
Just not go?
Yeah, just call it. Say, no, we'll forfeit rather than show up. You want to do this game in Australia? We'll play. But it has to be at a time that doesn't screw us for week 2. Piss off with that. What it tells me, I would guess, is because they've done it in the last couple of seasons, there has been a double header on the second Monday. It will be the Rams having one Monday night game and the Niners having the other Monday night game the following week to give them that extra day to try to make it manageable. It's still not manageable because when you're talking 19-hour time difference, that destroys you for multiple days before you can get adjusted back. It's ridiculous. This should have been a Thursday game, period. I think they don't want it to be that because the problem is the time difference is so large in Australia. It's different than Europe. Europe is 6 hours, 7 in a few spots. So you can have a game that is at noon on a Sunday and it's a night primetime game in that country that it's being played. With Australia, if you have it for Thursday, You either play it in the middle of the day when everybody's working and your ratings are crap, or you play it at night for the U.S. audience. But that would make it, the middle of the morning? Well, no, actually, that could work if I'm not, because Australia is ahead 19 hours. So it would be, if they played Thursday. Well, no, because then it's a Friday. Yeah, that's the problem. If you played Thursday night, it would be like midday, 2 in the afternoon, maybe on Friday during the work week for the home audience there in Australia. It just doesn't work. And that's why, sorry, you shouldn't be effing playing in Australia unless it is a game that happens way early. Hey, guess what? The Major League Baseball figured this out. They played in Asia to start a season. Guess what happens for those teams that play in Asia? They get a bunch of extra days off to make the adjustment. The game is usually played days earlier than the rest of the teams start their season. You don't screw the teams going over there.
It's frustrating too, because I don't want them to have an early bye. They said, oh, well, if you play week 1 in Australia, you give them an early bye. Well, that sucks. Then you got to go we've seen in 2019, they had the early bye. They were gassed by the end of the year. They were desperate to get that first overall seed so they could get that extra week off. And I have always said and continue to say, if they didn't win that game against Seattle in the final week of the regular season and they were the 5 seed instead of the 1 seed, I don't think they make the Super Bowl. They were gassed, man. I don't want the Niners to do that. This year they were gassed because they didn't have a bye till week 13, whatever it was. I do not, this whole, twisting the 49ers 2026 season into a pretzel just for this stupid international Australia game. I hate it already.
Yeah, I mean, you saw, this is something that other leagues do so much better. I talked about Major League Baseball. You know what just happened in Italian football, soccer? They were going to play a game in Miami, and the fans threw a fit that they were losing a game to foreign country, and the league kiboshed it and said, no, we're going to prioritize the fans, and it was actually the players that were upset about it because they wanted to come play in the U.S. But I think the NFL is also different because it is a set, rigid schedule. You play on Sunday. That's when almost all the games happen. For soccer and baseball and the NBA, you play all throughout the week. So you can work in an extra day because it's not set in stone. You must play the next Sunday. It's, well, if you play on Monday, you might play Thursday instead of Wednesday again in the NBA. Instead of 1 day off, you get 2 days off. Things like that if they did a bigger travel. That's all accounted for in most other leagues. Basketball has rules about if you play back-to-back games, you must have a day off in between, and they try to limit as much as possible after having back-to-back games. I'm talking about playing 2 games in 2 days. They try to have that game coming back from the day off at home. They can't do it all the time, but they try to limit it, and there are policies in place for it. The NFL is just sitting there saying, we don't give a F about anybody except for the money. And that's the problem. It's to the point that I think the players need to start. The Players Association needs to strike over this crap. This is ridiculous.
Well, not only that, but I'm stunned that Jed York would go along with it. Jed,
I don't think they were given a choice.
Well, Jed sits there and he says,
obviously you want to do well in business. That is not my number one priority. My number one priority is to win.
Is it? Because if you have an owner, you can raise holy hell about this. And I'm sure the NFL would ask other owners if they wanted to participate. The fact that Jed is going along with this, I would be, because don't forget, the owners are Roger Goodell's boss. Okay. So he can't go ticking off all the owners if he wants to keep his job. For Jed to go along with this, I'm shocked. This is just a bad look. And I think obviously the schedule doesn't come out until May. We don't know, but to put this in week 1 and potentially have it affect them for week 2. What if they put another NFC West game in week 2, right? So now you got to go all the way to freaking Australia. And what if you got to play Seattle in week 2?
I don't think they would do that, but I was fine with the Australia game. Didn't have a problem with it when I was assuming it wouldn't be on a freaking Sunday. This is ridiculous.
I don't like international games at all.
Maybe they'll do something crazy I highly, highly doubt it because I don't think the other teams would allow it, but maybe they play a week early.
That's not going to happen. They're not doing that. If anything,
No, I don't think so either. But you know what I mean? Like they play in week -1, and then when it's week 1, it's actually neither team is playing.
Why don't they just do it? You have the season open on a Thursday, right? Seattle gets to open their season at home against whoever. Have the 49ers play on Friday. What's wrong with that? Play the Friday before week 1. Then they have the extra time off to acclimate. Then you can put them on Sunday in week 2, and you're good. Like, that seems to be the easiest answer.
Actually, that would work because if they played on Friday, U.S. time, in prime time, say 8 p.m. kickoff, 19-hour difference, that makes it 3 p.m. Saturday afternoon in Australia. Because, again, it's a 19-hour difference going forward, not backward.
Right.
So that would be a Saturday afternoon. That works for Australia.
I just solved it. This is all I do. I'm here to solve problems. Okay. Like, just listen to me. Once again, if the Niners would do it or if Goodell would do it, I think everyone can agree everything would be much better. But of course, we all know that ain't going to happen. But yeah, so we'll see. But that was just a piece of news that I just saw right before we wrapped up, and I wanted to make sure to mention it. I accidentally got my son all depressed because I told him like football's over now. He's going into middle school next year. He'll be in 7th grade. And I said, you're not going to have football again until you're in middle school. And he was like, oh my God. So now every time I see him, I'm like, hey man, what's wrong? He's like, I'm just thinking about how long it's going to be until football comes back again. I like ruined his worldview now.
Yeah. You could tell. Oh, I was going to say, you could tell him that you're going to have football, just football this summer. The World Cup is happening. Broaden your kids' horizons because the World Cup tournament is the best tournament of any.
There will be football at Levi's Stadium. That's how I can sell.
Yeah. There you go.
I don't know if that's going to work. But that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you, everybody. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. If you are checking us out for the first time, hop on board. Perfect time. We got the franchise tag windows coming up. We got the combine coming up in less than 2 weeks. I'm sure there'll be some juicy trade rumors that percolate out of Indianapolis because they always do. It's going to be a lot of fun this offseason. So please hop on board, and I promise you will enjoy the ride. Thank you, Levin. We'll talk tomorrow.